Formula One is back in the sunshine state of Florida, and welcome to Miami. Amidst one of the most star-studded and vibrant Grand Prix, it's also a sprint weekend, our second of the year, and Oscar Piastri comes into it as the first Australian in 15 years to lead the F1 World Championship, with 3 wins to his name so far. Much to ponder, much to look forward to here from the Hard Rock Stadium. Welcome along to Weekend Warm-Up. Welcome to the pit lane. Alongside me, Lawrence Barretto, and a warm welcome back to F1 TV, to Ruth Buscombe as well. Guys, we're here in Miami. This race just delivers something a little bit extra, doesn't it, Lawrence?
It's just so special. I really feel like Miami is such a vibrant city, and I know we're a little away from Miami Beach and South Beach, but I think here in Miami Gardens, the promoters done such a great job to bring the party here, and we've got this incredible Hard Rock Stadium. Creates an incredible backdrop for a real party atmosphere for the fans here. It's
such a unique paddock. It's just unbelievable to be standing in the middle of the Hard Rock Stadium, which so often plays to other incredible sporting events. Ruth, a sprint weekend as well. Much jeopardy there for on the pit walls, in the garages, teams, drivers, because there are so many more unknowns.
So many more unknowns, and also more points up for grabs from everybody. And with the field as tight it is now, everyone's going to be wanting, one of those maximum 33 points. And remember, the last time we went to that sprint, we had multiple disqualifications, and I think everyone's going to be looking forward, but also maybe changing their approach a little bit in terms of risk versus rewarded to just how aggressive they want to be on that ride height and with the weight.
33 points are available, as you say, Ruth, over a sprint weekend, so it could well cause a swing in the standings. This track plays host to it. You've been out on this track a bit earlier on. You're not looking too green at all. You look all right.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be too mean about James Hinchcliffe, but I went with another driver and I didn't vomit. So, I mean, we'll leave that. But yeah, here we are on track. Oh, look at that. It's a beautiful track. I went out with Bernd Maylander, and what we got to see was, the grip level really rather low. That's normal round here. Actually, the layout looks really similar in terms of last year. We've still got that turn 2, turn 3, that first chicane that caused the incident in 2022 with Ocon and Magnussen. We've still got the trickiest part for me, that kind of half-blind turn 13, turn 14, where Max Verstappen and James Hinchcliffe did hit that bollard last year. It was F1 defining moment of the race.
I didn't know that James Hinchcliffe also hit that bollard.
He will deny it, but I saw a bollard and then I didn't see a bollard and then I vomited. So.
Great stuff. Well, I hope James Hinchcliffe is tuning in for this roasting that he's getting on weekend warm-up so far. Ruth, look, Ferrari, you mentioned earlier on the disqualifications that we saw in China in the Grand Prix, but not in the sprint race. That is where Lewis Hamilton triumphed, and that was seemingly this moment of glory for Ferrari. It's not been the same since then for them. They've had to make changes to the car after the double DQ for the skidware, for, of course, running the car too light as well. Talk us through those changes they've made and the impact of them.
Well, adding weight, as far as a driver is concerned, doesn't really impact your driving style. It just makes you kind of slower overall. So that shouldn't have too much in effect. But what we know about Lewis Hamilton is that he is exceptional under braking. He's really exceptional about the feel of the car. But in order to feel the car, you need to run it low. Now, in order to not to avoid another disqualification, they've had to raise the ride height. And since then, we have seen a bit of a drop off on his performance because effectively, if his superpower is flying, we've just taken away his wings. And we've not been able to see him replicate that performance since they raised the ride height. This race weekend, we're going back to that sprint format. Maybe that will help a little bit during the sprint, but then we have the main race and the main Grand Prix. We're going to have to see how we can adapt.
And like you said, they don't want to run any risk of any further disqualification at all. Well, look, it's not been the bright start the 7-time world champ will have hoped for at Ferrari, bar, of course, that sprint race victory. Let's hear from Lewis Hamilton now.
It's been a little bit frustrating these last few races for you, but we've seen stints in races where the car and you have been really competitive. What is stopping you repeating that performance, those quick stints?
Many things, lots of different things. There's not one particular.
Is there anything we can talk about here, having been back to the factory?
Not particularly. I mean, when I joined Mercedes, the first 6 months was tough, getting attuned to working with new people. Obviously, the engineers that I'm working with now are used to setting up a car for a different driver and a different driving style, and I'm used to driving a car with a different driving style, and so it's just a combination of a bunch of different things.
Are you able to drive this car instinctively, or are you having to think consciously while you're in it?
I would say you're generally always a mixture of the two. But I'm definitely working hard to adjust to this one for sure.
All right. Well, what about this weekend in Miami? What can we expect from you and Ferrari?
No clue. We'll do the best we can, and we've not got upgrades or anything this weekend, but we continue to try and optimize the car. And obviously, Charles in the last race did a fantastic job and showed what the car can do in a race. So the goal is to try to replicate that in a sprint race. Obviously, there's not a huge amount of changes you make. I think the one thing to take from it is that we didn't make a lot of changes, if actually any changes, going from P1 to then quali, as where on all the other weekends we've been tinkering with the car and making it worse. So, yeah.
A sprint race victory and, of course, a podium for Charles Leclerc last time out. It is not where Ferrari will want to be heading in to this sixth race of the season so far. It's not the start the seven-time world champion will have wanted either. And we were talking about the changes that Ferrari have had to make after that race weekend in China and how they seem to have impacted Lewis more. We can see the data in that, can't we, Ruth?
Yeah, it is. Logically, it does make sense. And let's not forget, Charles is a spectacular one-lap driver. In terms of qualifying form, he's done a really, really good job. And you can see there's this, drop-off. As we say, once we've had to raise the ride height, Lewis touched on it there. A lot of it is about communication. It's about getting the setup right. I mean, when I went to Ferrari, I honestly, half the language is completely different. The way that you have some things are positives, they go to negatives. And I do understand and sympathise with how he feels, because I had the opposite problem. I went from an Italian team to an English team, and it probably did take me about 6 months to adapt as well. But we can see from that data, race 4, 5 and 6, this is in the Grand Prix format after we've had to make it. And it is a drop-off. He's there, he's so close. This is normalised to lap times. But given the field is so tight now, maybe it's the equivalent of kind of 1 second on that plot. Actually, losing 2 to 3 tenths a couple of years ago wouldn't have made that much difference. Here, that means you're going to get knocked out of Q1, Q2 even. And so I really think he'll make incremental gains. Is that enough? We'll have to see.
It feels shocking to even say this about Lewis Hamilton, a 7-time world champion, but is time running out for him, Lawrence, in not being able to get on top of the cars in this new regulation? And is the pressure mounting on Ferrari equally with this slow start they've had?
I don't think time is running out, because I think there's still 18 races to go this year, and I think that he needs time. He needed 6 months of Mercedes to settle in there. We've seen drivers up and down this grid needing more time. Carlos needed a bit of time at Williams to just kind of get that feels for it. But from his own personal perspective, I think the frustrations will be growing, because I think he saw this as a real new opportunity to have a rebirth, to get on top of these new regulations with a different car. Maybe it was the Merc that was the issue, and we haven't seen that. So I think personally it's going to be increasingly difficult. And it's whether or not he will be able to cope with that effectively and make the changes needed in the speed that he needs to do. At the same time, when Charles Leclerc is driving out of his skin. Like in qualifying, again, he's so strong. I think it was half a second in the last race, that gap between him and in the race, he's so strong as well. And I think that will really get Lewis's head down a little bit if he can't find a way to get on terms with Charles quickly.
We'll have to see this weekend. It feels like this race weekend, and it being a sprint race, it's kind of a really important one for a number of drivers and teams, just to get the momentum swinging back their way. Ferrari, of course, are also in blue and white overalls as well, and you will have all, I'm sure, seen their livery. Many opinions on it, but there are a number of bespoke liveries coming Miami's way, Ferrari being one of them. Okay, we're now going to take a look back at Saudi Arabia and what happened in Jeddah.
This is the Jeddah Corniche circuit. Max Verstappen is the man to beat tonight.
Can someone do something magic at the first corner?
Good launch off the line for Oscar Piastri. Verstappen trying to hang on to it, but all four wheels off the road.
Yeah, he just forced me off.
And into the barrier with Yuki Tsunoda and Pierre Gasly.
Max, you have been given a 5-second time penalty.
Piastri is pitting, so they're having to react.
Yeah, push Max. Everything you have.
Verstappen pits from the lead.
Can Oscar now get on it?
What a move! That 5-second penalty switching the race leader. Lando Norris from 10th on the grid to 4th in the race.
Leclerc's really in contention.
Building up to 3rd place in the Grand Prix. Oh, that was so close. Oscar Piastri wins the Saudi Grand Prix.
Got a lot of fun to have this year.
The new championship leader in Formula One.
Oscar Piastri leads the F1 World Championship. And earlier on, he was in the pen and he was probed a number of times by journalists trying to draw him into whether it would change his approach, whether he preferred to hunt or be hunted. He won't be drawn on anything. He is ice cold, Lawrence. It's amazing, isn't it, to watch?
Bulletproof, isn't it, in the way that he deals with just any challenge that goes his way. I think the fact that, he's got 3 out of 5 wins already. He's leading Lando 3-2 in the head-to-head in quali, and that was his weakness last year. He said pre-season that he feels he's got all of the tools in his toolbox now. He really felt like even after just 2 years, he felt that strong. And I think the difference this year is he's gone and delivered. Whereas with Lando, I think he came out of the winter going, I feel confident, and we've seen the weaknesses come through. And I think Oscar's really relishing the opportunity, the real genuine opportunity to become the team leader. And he's really grasping it with both hands.
We'll come to Lando in a minute, but this feels such an important weekend for him in terms of the way the momentum is swinging through the championship and through the season. We look back, though, at Oscar's career and the fact that he's won these titles in previous Formula Europe, F3, F2, the very first time of asking. How much does that take for a driver to do that, Ruth?
It takes a lot of skill. It takes a lot of mental execution as well. He's just gloriously unflappable. I wasn't at the previous race, but I did see him this morning. I said, congratulations on leading the championship. And he said, thank you. Like, it was kind of, just talking about, someone passing a cup of tea. Absolutely phenomenal. And if you speak to world champions, plural, in this paddock, a lot of them have always mentioned Oscar's name as the one to watch and the one that they were most worried about in a flattering and in a complimentary way in terms of his raw talent. And I think he's now executing it. And I think what we saw last year, it was the qualifying and the consistency. And he's fixing both of those. So a real championship prep.
Max Verstappen himself was full of praise, wasn't he, saying he just doesn't make a single mistake. On the other side of the garage, there is a driver who is making some mistakes. Mentally, though, he's bouncing back, that's for sure. Let's see what he can do here in Miami. It's Lando Norris.
I think there are just certain things which don't allow me to feel what I need to feel. And those things are what allow me to drive to the level that I can drive at, to get pole positions and to drive at the highest level in racing. But it's clear there have been some changes, and whether it's just suited Oscar or Oscar's made up to do a better job at adapting, then that's not for me to kind of know or try and figure out or waste my time on. But for me, it's obviously hurt me a little bit more, and I'm not being able to perform at the level that I was at the end of last season, which I think is the best level that I've been. I don't believe so much in the momentum stuff, so just my opinion. But I'm doing what I can. I'm clearly I've made some mistakes and not at where the level I need to be, but I believe I can be at the level soon enough. So no reason to be worried. It's round 6 of 24. I'm not going to say that forever, but I know I need to get a move on and I need to get into gear a little bit, but. I'm doing the best I can every weekend at the minute, and trying to improve. But the speed is there, the pace is there, the race pace is definitely there. It's just one thing I need to tidy up, and it's a difficult thing, but I'm confident that I'll get it.
This feels such a significant weekend for Lando Norris, although he won't be drawn on that himself. He'll say that this is any other weekend and there are 18 races to go, but you just feel the momentum so firmly with Oscar Piastri at the moment. What can Lando Norris do in response, especially after that qualifying crash, of course, in Saudi Arabia? In terms of the heat here as well, how much will that play into McLaren's hands, do you think, in terms of how that car can manage the temperature?
I think in quite a significant way. We've got the heat and the tyre compounds are one step softer. So we have the softest tyres here, and that has been another advantage of that. McLaren is not only running well in the heat, but also the tyre degradation, and they have an advantage. So I think, based on what we've seen before, it's going to be a two-way plus maybe a Max Verstappen poking his head in.
We've talked so much about the gap, the advantage that McLaren seem to have. Many teams also looking to Spain, though, and that flexi-wing change, thinking that might just shift things about. McLaren aren't that bothered about it. They say it won't change much. Red Bull seemingly optimistic about that. And while we're on Red Bull, our very best wishes as well to Kelly Piquet and Max Verstappen, who are expecting a baby. Max was not here today for the media day. We're told he is due in, though, tomorrow for the race weekend, as usual. But our best wishes to them. Yuki Tsunoda was here, though. Let's hear from him.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. I would say it's not complicated in the sense that to try to drive around. I mean, it's not easy for sure. Like what I felt in V-Cup was a bit more lenient, in bit more forgiving with any directions. And definitely, Red Bull has slightly sharper, kind of narrower window that they can form. Which I think being a window and to drive around is not. I mean, still not easier than a big car, but better than I thought. Yeah, just have to get used to it. Like even the limit, I just still don't know yet exactly because I had Q3 last lap in Saudi. A slight push more, and I had massive snap, which I didn't expect for. So, yeah, it'll get there, but just I just try to keep my head down and it slowly builds up.
I don't know what Yuki Tsunoda is doing here. But look, he's looking to build on, of course, crashing out that lap 1 incident with Pierre Gasly in Saudi Arabia. Won't be what he wanted. He wants more time in this Red Bull to get to grips with it. I'm not sure what he's getting to grips with there, but hopefully he achieved it. Just a word to bring you, actually, on the pit lane here and the garages. We are next to the Mercedes garages. I can tell you that Burner Boy and Roddy Rich are not going to be racing this weekend, but this is all in, of course, promotion of F1 the album. So the film is coming out very, very soon. The premiere in New York on June 16th. The F1 the album as well is out on June 27th, and you can see all of the artists involved in that, from Ray to Ed Sheeran, now adorning the garages here. And of course, Brad Pitt's character in the film as well, Sonny Hayes, is on that one just there. Red Bull, though, their prospects for this weekend. Max Verstappen, 12 points off the top 2. There are 12 points separating the top 3, which is so exciting, isn't it, coming into this kind of mid-part of the season. Did we expect Max to be there? Is that just a bit of a Max Verstappen masterclass?
Oh, absolutely. That is all Max. I think you only have to look at the difference between that car and the car on the other side of the garage. I think if you'd asked Max at the start of the season whether or not he'd still be within the fight this close, 12 points in it, especially after McLaren looked so strong in testing, he would have taken that, I think. I think we've seen the kind of champion and the kind of talent that Max is, the ability to get the most out of a car that clearly is a challenge to drive. We've seen, though, since Yuki's got in the car, that it is possible in that second seat to get performance and to score points. And I think we just saw him larking about there. But I think that's significant in that he doesn't seem fazed by the challenge. Yeah, we talked about that one incident with his old teammate and friend Pierre Gasly. He could come here with his head down, and he hasn't, because I think he's got the support of the team. He's got the confidence that he can make that car work. And actually, I do think they're the second best here, and they could be in the fight. I think McLaren might have the edge in quali, but I think in the race, I do think Red Bull are going to be a big threat here.
Yeah, I think Yuki Tsunoda, by all accounts, is really comfortable within that team and almost feels as though he's sort of assumed the place that he perhaps always should have been in, and we're seeing that in the way that he's larking about, but equally able to get in the car and get something from it, and we'll see what more he can bring for this weekend. George Russell is P4 in the championship at the moment. Ruth, last season that Mercedes was a bit of a pig, wasn't it, in the heat, in the very hot. A pig to drive.
Say what you really think, Laura Winter.
I'm just saying what I'd imagine the drivers probably felt about it. But in the heat, it was super tough, wasn't it? It would just fall away from them. Positive Saturdays would turn to a very difficult Sunday. We saw a glimmer of that in Saudi Arabia, didn't we? How much do you think the Mercedes team needs to be aware of that, wary of that here?
Well, I don't want to use your words, but yeah, I think they're going to be wary of it. You know, this season is a season of evolution, not revolution. You know, the cars are basically kind of things that have got plasters on, the problems from last year. So I do think they're going to be wary. But you know, they've done such a strong start to the season. You see the two Mercedes boys walking around. They look like they're ready for it. You know, I think they've got new suits, new helmets, changes as good as a rest. But yeah, I do think I agree with you a little bit on the back foot. Will we go far as a pig? Maybe a dolphin. It's more topical.
Very apt being here. But look, it's definitely got a bigger window than we saw last year, for sure, but it did come unstuck in Saudi. George Russell, though, very much a talking point for you, Lawrence, in terms of those that driver market.
I think so. I think the performance that he's delivered this year has shown that he's stepping up into the team leader position that I think Mercedes were hoping that he would do, that he would perform very strongly against their highly rated talent in terms of Kimi Antonelli. I know it sounds weird that we're talking about George and where he might go because of the way that Toto's talks about wanting to keep the same lineup, wanting to keep their drivers, but the reality is his contract is up for renewal at the end of this year. And should other drivers move, there is the real potential that his seat, he will need to look elsewhere. Look, the Max Verstappen rumours have died down a little bit in linking him to Mercedes, but that won't mean that George won't be looking around. It's very normal in this paddock to go and have conversations with other teams, just to kind of get
he's done that with Red Bull, right? That's what's being talked about this week.
But it makes sense to do that, right? It makes sense to go around and see where the lay of the land is and what the future is, because often you don't look at next year, you look at 2, 3, 4 years down the line and where you want to end up. So I think conversations are happening, probably more informal, but I think it is sensible to do that. And obviously George, if he delivers here, will want to stay at Mercedes, especially if they're doing well and they end up having the best engine in the next rule cycle from 26. But he's also got to look after himself, so it kind of makes sense to do that.
He's had such a strong start to the season. It's a fascinating thing to be talking about him potentially losing a seat here, I guess. But look at what happened to Carlos Sainz, for example, last year. And we can hear now from both of the Williams drivers.
Yeah, I feel like Saudi was the first weekend of the year where we put things together. I think so far for 5 races I had shown very good signs of quick adaptation, speed and good progress with the team, but never really had put together a good weekend, and Saudi was definitely a first one. It's a shame that it's a weekend where none of the top 8, top 7 guys made mistakes, so we could only go away with 4 points. +2 with Alex, but there will come some of them.
Do you feel on a personal level you're performing better than ever? You've obviously got a super experienced driver alongside you and you're matching him, if not beating him, on other races. That must be really good from a confidence perspective.
Good for my confidence, I won't lie about that. But in terms of a feeling, I honestly, giving you a boring answer, I don't think I've changed too much my driving from the last few years. I think that honestly, more than anything, it's just that the cars that the team have produced has been very strong, and it's given me a platform where I feel like I can score points at every race, and you know how this sport works when you're scoring points and you know you're on TV a little bit more, your perception gets changed a little bit. But I feel like, yeah, I'm still very happy with how I've been driving this season so far, but I haven't done anything much differently.
Well, Williams, P5 at the moment, double points finished last time out there. As Alex just having a quick chat with Gunther Steiner, who is here this weekend. There are so many F1 stars and non-F1 stars all over the place here at Miami this weekend. Williams then will be buoyant coming into this weekend. You're sitting down with James Vowles tomorrow as well, aren't you? That'll be a wonderful chat. Looking forward to all the insight. Looking though to Haas then, who were in that P5 position. Esteban Ocon and Ollie Behrman, both with really decent performances so far. One of their home races, of course, this one, in being an American race. Where do you put the Haas for this weekend, Lawrence?
I think they're right up at the top end of the midfield. I think with Esteban Ocon, he's had this kind of fluctuating form over the course of the year. I think he'll want to understand why he hasn't been able to get that performance consistently. Ollie, I think, has had a great start to life at Haas after that difficult first weekend in Australia. I think they're right in the mix, and that's why I'm delighted to have a lot of both their drivers in my fantasy team, Laura.
look at this, bringing in F1 fantasy. It's a bold move considering you are not leading.
I'm catching you, though. I'm catching you.
I know, you are. I know. Yeah, the Haas drivers and the Haas team have had the highest increase in valuation. So if you've had them in your team, you will see big budget gains, which I know you needed. So I'm really, I'm really happy for you. And Ruth, you're doing, like, for your rookie season, you're going well.
I was on a different time zone, okay? I'm back, and I'm ready to roll.
Okay, she's getting competitive. I love it. Right, on to Aston Martin then. Oh, I don't even know where, Alonso's yet to score points. I don't know where this team is currently at. And are they simply now just waiting for 2026? It would seem foolish to throw away an entire season for that. Is Newey going to come in and have any input on this car if it proves to be as uncompetitive as it currently is?
I mean, it's difficult, right? Yes and no. It does look like potentially they've taken their kind of like foot off the gas, metaphorically. But maybe investing in 2026 is the smartest move. You know, you can't ever really criticize what Newey's doing in the background. Generally, that historically goes wrong for engineers. I've been personally spurned by this. So I think let's wait to see. Let's see if they can have some big Fernando results. With Fernando Alonso in a car, there's always chance.
Oh, absolutely. You know, the two-time world champ for sure. Will he score points here for the first time in Miami? On then to VCARB. Well, I know the internet had many opinions about the Ferrari livery. They've also had many opinions about the Racing Bulls livery. And I have to say, I'm a huge fan of pink, but it is stunning. Lawrence, you were there at the reveal, weren't you?
Yeah, I don't know if it's best one-off livery ever. Like, I thought it was super.
I love it.
It's popping. They did a great reveal down in Miami Beach, just on the beach side. Had it on a little floating pedalo, but they do it big. The detail of, you've even got the can top on the wheel covers. I think that attention to detail is great. But look, they'll be talking about the pace of the car this weekend, and that is a very, very quick car that we've seen, particularly in Isaac Hadjar's hands so far this year. But even Liam Lawson, when I was talking to him earlier today, is feeling confident in the car. He just hasn't hooked the weekend up. So look, we've got 4 teams separated by 12 points in the Constructors' Championship towards the bottom. This midfield has never been tighter. So while I'm saying that they are super competitive and right at the sharp end, if they have a bad sprint quali and a bad sprint and then top quali, they could have a really difficult weekend.
I know Alpine are not far behind at all, and Nora Sauber. Now every single team has scored points this season. Alpine, there are rumours again around Jack Doohan's seat, aren't there? And the potential seat swap with Franco Colapinto in the wings, waiting. What are we both hearing from that side of things?
Well, there was this speculation that Doohan's contract wasn't actually guaranteed for the full season, but with some number of races, maybe it was a prime number, we're not really sure, and then it was based on performance. So I think all eyes are locked on what's happening every single session, which is not great, you know, for a rookie driver to have. But also, they've got to deliver. You know, Formula One is it's not a training camp. And drivers need to deliver. And no one is a bad driver in Formula One. Everyone is absolutely excellent. It's just some are slightly more excellent than others.
I mean, I actually think that Jack's handling it all pretty well, considering that he's got the guy who might replace him stood behind him and in the garage so often at a race weekend. And I know he probably hasn't delivered the kind of big results that he wants, but I think the team are impressed at the way that he is fighting. But as long as Franco is there, unfortunately for Jack, I feel for him, because I think there is always going to be those questions. You know, the job that Franco did last year for Williams, and the reason that they brought him on board was that at some point, you know, he'd only gone there because he wants a seat. So I think it's going to be hard for Jack. But if he can deliver, if he can just pull a result out of the bag, I think that will help ease some of the pressure on him.
Yeah, look, pressure's already on for a sprint weekend, let alone worrying about your seat as well. Sauber also have a new livery and you're sitting down with Gabriel. Oh, you've sat down with Gabriel Bosler.
Yes.
Lovely. We will see that throughout the course of the weekend. Here is how that weekend is shaping up here at the Miami Grand Prix. It's a sprint weekend, don't forget, so we're straight into the action come Friday here at the Miami Grand Prix. FP1 comes 12:15, building up to that, before sprint qualifying at 4:15 for your pre-show, and then on to Saturday, the pre-sprint show on air at 11:20, the sprint race starting at midday, and your post-sprint show immediately after the checkered flag. Then on to our usual Grand Prix weekend, pre-qualifying show at 3:30, qualifying here in Miami at 4 p.m, and the post-qualifying show straight after that fight for pole position. And on to Sunday, a bumper pre-race show to bring you from 2:50 before the race start for the Miami Grand Prix at 4 p.m. And do not miss the post-race show. What a weekend we have then ahead of us here in store at the Hard Rock Stadium for the Miami Grand Prix, and a sprint weekend as well. We've also got F1 Academy racing here this weekend. You'll have commentary there from Ben Edwards and last year's winner, Abby Pulling. Do tune in to all the action there. Strategy-wise, Ruth, for this race, what are we saying? It was a one-stop last year.
It was a one-stop last year.
And a safety car.
But we had one step harder compounds. We've now got the C3, C4, C5. So on paper, it looks like the two-stop maybe is still a touch slower, but we'll have to wait and see. Last week out in Jeddah, Charles Leclerc did that stunning stint, extending long on that medium tyre. If that C4 is the same, could be a one-stop, but it's a sprint, so we've also got to factor that in. And C5 qualifying, that's going to be spicy.
It's a sprint, so we're going to have absolutely no longer data to look at. No looking at the compounds. It is going to be fascinating. I do love it when a sprint weekend pops up and you've got this kind of jeopardy. And talking of jeopardy, there is a 40% chance, last time I checked, of thunderstorms on Sunday. Add that into the mix. Final thoughts then, guys. Predictions, please.
I think it's going to be a three-way fight between Oscar, Lando and Max. I'm not saying anything particularly outrageous there, but I do think that Lando is going to have the edge. I think there's something about having this break over the last couple of days, the way he handled himself in the press conference today, the way he's handling himself generally. I think if he can have a big weekend here, and that's what I'm expecting, I think he's going to get the edge on Oscar this weekend.
I think for the same top three, just to be different, I still think Max might be coming back for that win. You know, last year the safety car didn't go his way. This year maybe it could.
I'm going to agree. I think we will see a Lando Norris victory here after, of course, his first coming 1 year ago. And I watched that back, actually, coming into this race weekend. And there was so much gleeful emotion there. And it was in such a juxtaposition to what we saw in Saudi in qualifying last time out. And you just hope for McLaren, for Papaya fans, for Lando Norris fans, he can find a bit of that once again to bring here. But
and for the championship battle.
He's got the ultimate pressure from his very own teammate, exactly. Thank you both very much. Thanks, Lawrence. Thank you, Ruth. Thanks to all of you for watching as well. Join us for a sprint weekend here at the Miami Grand Prix. Bye for now.